Now I want to turn to our special segments for tonight and go to Clark Kooning, MMR, for his build along of the Downtown Deco kit. As I said, this is Clark's last evening doing this build along.
Yippee!
The next time that we'll hear from Clark will be on the 21st for the modelers that have built along with him. So Clark, I'll turn it over to you, and I really do appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
Well, today was a crazy day because I finally got the ink at 11:30 this morning, and so everything you see this after, everything you're going to see this tonight, was basically done between noon and call it 6:30. Okay, let's see if we can get going. Woohoo! Everybody see that?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me make this smaller. And hello to John Bates out in beautiful downtown Winnipeg. It snowed like hell there in the last 2 days, so too bad, John.
Thank you, Clark. Much appreciated.
Well, I talked to my brother in Stonewall when he was cursing. So anyway, let's go build along with Clark. This is the final segment. Yippee! So first of all, if you remember from the last session, we did a review, or we did some signs. Now I'm going to do a little review, and then we're going to talk about a little bit of details and putting it all together and some final pictures. So remember way back when we first started, I said, don't spray the building white to seal it as per the instructions, and to use the matte clear finish. Well, here's the reason. If you really screwed up all the painting you've been doing, you can put a very light coat of white primer on the building and start over now. If you would have put this bright primer on at the beginning, because it is much thicker than the clear coat that we used to seal the building, it would hide a lot of details, because then you would have painted the building twice. So that's why we do that. So you had to wait, 3 sessions to learn that, but that's what it's for. So in case you need to repaint, now's a good time to spray it. So I like the effect. We were talking about painting and adding a little bit of that stucco detail, or the cemented over the brick. And I always have liked that effect. So I used a little gray green and just lightly put it over the patchwork on the structure and let it dry. So as we know, our first timer bar is our project. It's a hydrocal project, and we're going to put the signs on it. So this is a bit of a review. We're going to talk about metal signs, painted on signs, and maybe a hanging sign out front. Okay. So metal signs are general, or ceramic signs, depending on the era, are generally attached to the building. Painted on signs, like the one in the middle, are actually right painted into the brick. And wood signs are just that. They're made out of wood, and then a sign painter would paint them. So metal signs, I like to use brochure paper, about 180 bond. And the reason is that the bond is a lot thicker than regular paper, and it's a lot more structured, so that when you make the signs, it actually stands off the building a little bit. For painted signs, I like to use tissue paper. Now, tissue paper is like the stuff we use for stuffing gift bags. And this process was shown to me by a fellow named Jack Ellis at Bar Mills. For signs that hang, I like to use styrene sheet to affix the signs and make them all pretty thick. And then I use either regular paper or brochure paper to attach them onto that styrene. So for metal signs, well, we're going to print off our signs on brochure paper, and then we're going to apply any weathering first to make the signs weathered. And we do that in the full sheet rather than having them cut out. Then we're going to use a sharp blade and cut out the sign neatly, and then take a black magic marker on an angle from the back. We're going to do all the edges. So here's the signs that I finally got to be able to print off, because I got the ink. And here's one on tissue, and here's one on the regular bond or the heavy bond paper, and here it is here. Now I'm applying a very light wash over this. You can use a white, you can use a black. I used a little black, and just to wash it before I even cut it out. So then we're going to cut them out and use a nice sharp edge, a metal edge that you can cut up against, and a nice sharp X-Acto knife. Once you're going to come out, I like to add a little more weathering, and I use burnt umber and a dry sponge, and I really get the paint off of that sponge before I touch it to the signs. So here's what the top one looks like, with a little bit of rust added to it, because remember, it's supposed to be metal, and the other one hasn't been touched as of yet. Now you can see the difference of adding that black magic marker. See how it gives it like a nice black outline? You can see down here where the bottom of this sign has not been done yet, and you can see that white. You don't want to see that white when it's on the building. Again, we're going to use that black magic marker, and from the back, blacken it up. Then we're going to dry fit the sign onto the building. Make sure you get it nice and centered and square. In this case, you can use a brick row to give you a baseline. So then we're going to use some white glue to secure the sign to the building using a plastic bag over your hand. As I mentioned before, if you don't put the plastic bag over your finger, that glue will come up through it. It will smear the ink of the sign too. It will tend to want to curl up around your finger because of the glue, and then you pull your finger up and the sign stuck to it. This way, it will not stick to the bag. Now, the other ones that I really like to use, I like to use these rubber paint brushes, as I've mentioned before in my tools, tricks, and in previous clinic on doing the signs here. I really like these big rubber brushes. Now this one is sort of got an angled flat spot on it, and it's really nice to position the sign in place. Okay, so as I mentioned, I learned the sign from, or the printed signs from Jack Ellis. We're going to use tissue paper, just like the stuff they use to stuff gift bags. We're using a white one, obviously. Cut a piece of tissue paper slightly smaller than the regular copy paper. Or again, use the brochure paper, which I actually prefer. Use some 3M Scotch tape to tape the tissue paper onto the regular bond or the brochure paper. And then we're going to feed the tissue paper through your printer, printing the signs onto the tissue paper. Let it dry. So what can signs do? In this case, in brick signs, it can give structure identity, or it can sell a product. So again, here's our tissue paper. We're going to tape it down onto the sheet, and it's ready for the printer. Make sure you insert the tissue paper into your printer properly. Ask me how I know. The most printers will print on the side down facing side because it comes out on a roll. Okay. So I usually, just to prove that, I take a piece of paper and put non-tissue side and up. And when it goes through, look at that, it prints on the tissue side. Woohoo! Third time is usually the charm. So now we have, these were the signs printed on just the heavy bond, and now here it is on the tissue. So we're going to gently cut the signs from the tissue paper, and do this gently. You want to use, again, a very sharp knife. Now, the two top signs are out of the tissue, and you can see the difference in thickness. These things are tissue thin. And we're going to use that as the painted signs. Again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use some white glue. We're going to put it on. We're going to use that plastic bag over our finger again, and we're going to push that sign into place gently. Or we can, again, use our rubber brush. Now, this is where it becomes a little different, because you want the sign to be molded right into that brick. So I love these sharp rubber brushes. I should have turned actually that picture on an angle, but it's actually V-shaped. And when you run it along the brick lines, it will push that tissue into that that crevice. Now it's not very deep, it's not very thick or anything, so you have to have a nice sharp sort of edge to that rubber brush. And always start at the top and work your way down, because if you start in the middle somewhere, what will happen is you will actually pull the sign in. So by starting at the top up here and going across, you'll push that in, and it will affix itself into the brick. Now you can also, what I did, I took a little X-Acto knife and I kind of just peeled this corner up, so I have like a real faded look to it, like the brick is, the sign is coming off a little bit. This one, exactly the same thing. This is the second part of this sign. And you can see here where I've pulled the brick away, and over here on the corner, I should say, pulled the tissue part away, and it looks, I think, pretty good. So let's let them dry a bit before moving on.
Clark,
Now, yes,
I got a question for you.
you always have a question. Go ahead, sir.
I live in Florida. You mentioned you pulled it away to make it look like the tissue was coming off the brick. I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, see up here how the tissue is nice and solid.
Yes.
Okay, and then see down here how the brick is exposed.
Yes.
So what I've basically done, I've torn or removed some of that tissue paper.
Gotcha.
Okay, and same down here.
Gotcha.
Did you do that before did you do that in the workbench before you put it on, or you do it after you put it on the model?
I did it on after I put it on the model.
And you just cut it out with an X-Acto knife, right?
I just pulled it. It just, because it's wet, because it's in the glue, and
It'll kind of tear by itself then.
it will if you rub it hard enough. Yeah.
Okay.
So all you have to do is kind of pull it away and pick the residue up with the tweezers, and you're all set.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Clark,
Yes.
another quick question. When you print that, what density do you print? Do you do like a draft or like a picture type?
No, I do it as the best,
Okay.
or whatever the top one is that your printer will do. Now, if you remember, for those who are with us in the previous episode, I showed that we had copied the signs from the kit. We're not really using the kit signs at all. We used the copier printer and saved it into the computer, and then I computer generated all these signs from that from saving that JPEG. Okay, so
hey Clark,
yeah,
has anyone actually painted the sign like the prototype, using really small brushes?
not me, but if somebody wants to try it, they're welcome.
Yes, and you can visit them in the sanatorium in northern New York.
This is so much easier. Thank you very much. But you know what? I know some guys who do graffiti. I know some guys who, sure, it's quite possible, but this is so much simpler, and I think it gives a very good representation of brick signs. So.
Clark, just a question. Have you played at all with looking at different transparency levels of the tissue? Because it seems to me, I've seen some of that looked more transparent and some of it was more white. And I'm wondering if, you actually get transparent where it has more of because almost the bottom, and maybe it's the colors you chose, there's kind of a bit of a see-through, which you sometimes had in that. They weren't solid. They actually were outlined letters, and there was still the brick in between.
Well, that's the thinness of the tissue.
Yep.
That's the thinness of the tissue. That's exactly why you want to do that, so that you get that look.
I'm just wondering if there's different kind of levels of transparency in different tissues, and looking for.
There probably is.
I thought maybe you'd seen that as you've been playing with. That was was kind of the question.
I bought one package and I've been using it for like 3 years.
Oh, okay. So you're habitual on that brand.
So like I'll let you know when I run out.
Mhm.
But no, now the other thing you can do is you can take these signs, and I'm going to do a whole new sign clinic, and I'll explain all this really at another time. But you can take these signs, and when you make it as a JPEG or a GIF file, you can go into different draw applications, and you can even fade the sign before you even print it. And that works really well too. But I just kind of wanted to do a basic.
By the way, if you use PowerPoint,
Yeah.
if you got PowerPoint, you can throw your graphics into PowerPoint, and you just put a white box over them
Yes.
or a gray box, and you can change the level of transparency. You can just naturally fade it,
Yeah.
and you can even generate gradations and stuff like that before you print them.
Yeah. And that will be for the next clinic.
Quick question about printers.
Yes.
Which is better, laser printer or inkjet?
I think for this, actually, I think an inkjet is actually better. This is all inkjet. Okay, we're going to move on, or we're going to be here all night. We can ask questions.
No, let's move on.
You're going to let the signs dry, and we're going to talk about the roof. Now, in the kit, you get this little piece of plastic, which is the roof, and it gives you also a piece of black cardboard, which is fine. Now, you can do sandpaper, or you can even apply tissue and paint it black and put it on the roof. I did it really simple. I did it with what the kit came with, and so all I did was glue the black paper onto the roof, and then before that, though, I sized the what I call the subroof. I tested it dry first, and then I glued the paper on and basically glued it into position. And I didn't put any of the, you can normally on a bigger building, you'd want to put like a little piece of plastic or a wood and make a railing so that the roof would sit on it so it's nice and square. This building is so small that it just snapped right in and glued in place with a little sanding and cutting to get it into the right shape. So I didn't really worry about it too much. Once I had the black paper and it was glued into position. Okay, we're getting close. So now the doors, if you remember from our last episode, we painted the doors just with this Krylon camouflage to give it a quick spray and let them dry. Now you're going to put the glue the glass inside the door. You're going to have to trim that glass piece to fit the door, and you want to make sure it covers the dormer windows and the major window. Once you got them sort of dry fit, you can glue them in place, and this is what's happening here. Now I'm going to put a little downspout on the model, and I love working with styrene for this one purpose. Now in the kit, he actually gives you some metal pieces. It can be either used for the sign that hangs off of the building, or you can use it as a downspout. But I like the styrene. I used 1/16 rod for this. I dipped one end in some testers, in this particular case, plastic solvent. Remember, liquid plastic is not a glue, it's a solvent. It actually melts the styrene. So what it does, it softens the styrene, and then I used a little pair of pliers and just make the bend to make the end of the spout. Once I have that, I just measured it for size, painted and weathered it, and glued it in place. Now, the nice thing about this, remember I said, if you don't sort of fix that joint along this building where the sidewall joins the front, if you have a little gap, these downspouts are perfect for covering that gap. You know, most really good modelers know how to fix errors. They may make them, but they know how to fix them, and that's a real easy fix. You can put it down,
or at least hide them.
well, that's right. Okay, so then once I sort of had everything in place, I take a very thin, and I mean thin, black wash and go over the whole building, signs and everything. And next thing we got to do, it comes with a little step, so you're going to clean up the little step, and I just painted it some gray. And I stuck the step in front of the bar, and we're going to talk about adding a couple more little details. So here it is mounted. You've got the downspout. You've got all the signs. Our step is sort of glued in place. Our sign looks pretty good. It's readable yet faded. I didn't put a hanging sign on this one. I just put this little bar sign up on top. And our friend the seagull seems to enjoy it. And that's the other side with it's a little different sign, but that's the metal sign. So that's why the rust and stuff. And you'll notice it actually sits off the brick as compared to the other side, which is painted on. You'll notice here, this has actually come off a little bit. That's because it wasn't even dry when I was taking these pictures at like 6 o'clock tonight. And all I did was put a little garbage can out front. I have this old light. You could put a light inside. You could put one of the plug and play gooseneck lights would look really good over the top here. And that's kind of how it's done. So now, any questions?
I think you've done a fantastic job, and I do want you to come back and do your clinic on signs, because I think there's a lot of questions and a lot of issues there. But the one that you did for this model, I think it's fantastic, and I can't thank you enough for doing this, Clark. I know you've built many of these kits, but so many of us haven't, not in this medium, and I think it's been really beneficial to see how easy these kits can be built if you take a little care and take your time.
Exactly. And I hope people who have the kit are working on them. And those who haven't, it's going to be in YouTube. You can still purchase it from Randy at Downtown Deco. And then you'll be able to just go back to our YouTube shows and build the model. I think you'll really enjoy it. It is much a different medium, as you suggested. It's not wood, it's not laser, it's hydrocal, and really the detail in this, or the construction, is very straightforward. It's the painting that makes the model and the signs. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm glad I'm done with it. Only because I have some other things I want to do. But we're all working, as you said, on the other project that we're going to do in September, October, and with the other modelers on board, and we'll go from there.
Clark, thanks again. I really do appreciate it. You've been fantastic.
You're welcome.